Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Healthcare India podcast. And today we have a treat for you. It's a very different episode from the ones we've done so far because today we have Niel Ateem, who works in a very fascinating place, area of marketing and branding. And he works a lot with healthcare organizations. But his background itself is very interesting. So I will request Neil to first introduce himself and then we can get right into it.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for having me, first of all, Dr. Vikram, and I'm happy to be here to add value to the audience. A little bit about me, my background. I have a background, of course, in marketing. It's already been 12, 13 years. Before that, it's been computer science, and I made that transition quite a long time ago. I'm originally from the Caribbean, now living in Bali, and I've worked over the past couple of years with some major health, wellness, biohacking, longevity type companies over the past couple of years, and doing a lot of great, amazing stuff in terms of impact, revenue, generating clients, the full works. And I'm happy to share a lot of that today with the audience. So, yeah, I think as we go into the topics, more about my background, my experience, and how we can add value to the audience will unfold.
Excellent. It's great. And we have not, at least from my childhood, I don't have such fond memories of the Caribbean teams coming to India because we used to mostly get thrashed. Of course, the situation is very different now, but great to have you. And let me get right into it. Right, I'm going to start with something negative. So, what are the three common mistakes healthcare organizations make when it comes to marketing and branding? What are the three things that the minute you see it, you say, "Oh my God, are we going to start with this?" How do you? What are the three most common ones you see?
Yeah, it's a good question. Good to put me on the spot, right? But I can already formulate one which I see is common, and I have to work through every time when I work with a new organization, a new company, etc. So it's the first one is there's no differentiation, as in they say the same thing, right? So in marketing, in branding, a lot of it is copying, right? Not wholesale copying, but they would look at the competitors and be like, okay, if they're doing this, then I should probably do this too. This is probably working for them, but it's all assumptions, right? So one of the things that really works is to stand out, say something different, go against the grain. And I can give you an example. One of the companies I fractional CMO for, which is
Mhm.
Chief Marketing Officer, so part time, I have a product in the space of like blue light blocking, right? And everyone
Mhm.
says the same thing: block blue light,
Okay.
right? Protect
Mhm.
your sleep, etc. But nobody talks about circadian health. They don't educate the market on the negatives of blue light. They don't tie it into your lifestyle. They don't tie it into sleep, recovery, performance, and they don't
Mhm.
say the other side of it. They just talk about the mechanics of what it is and why this product is great, right? And this would lead
Mhm.
into the second one. So first, have a distinct messaging. Don't try to copy. You need to try to stand out from what your competition is saying, right? So find the
Mhm.
edge. Now, the second thing it leads directly into, which is always talking about your product or service, right? So let's say in the healthcare space, if they're offering some package, let's say, for example, right, you have an offer which is high ticket, as they say, which you may do some kind of testing, let's say genetic testing, MRI, CT scan, and you have a whole package in there, right? And you're talking about, well, this is what you're going to get, and you list it out, right? You're going to get the MRI, the CT scan, the blood test, your blood panel, all of this. Like, okay, so what, right? So always ask, so what? So that is where it comes in, where you need to sell the benefit and not the mechanics, not the actual specifics, because that is what people buy into. So in this instance, this example, it's more like on the preventative side, right? So you want to sell them a solution, which is this testing, for example. However, what you need to focus on is the end result. Why would they opt in for something like this? They're doing it because they want to get a specific end result, right? So they want to get something to prolong their longevity, to live a longer, healthier life, to play with their kids, to save. These are the real benefits that they'll actually be getting there.
I think I lost you for a bit.
Yeah, I kept going, so I'm not sure what happened there, but did you catch what I was saying?
Yeah, you said they don't highlight they just talk about the mechanics of it. For
Hmm.
example, lab testing, and then they don't talk about the value.
Yeah,
I got
exactly.
that one.
Yeah, perfect. So that is the second point, right? The first one, obviously, is standing out, differentiation. The second one is going towards the benefit, and the third, I would say, is building a brand and reputation. So there's the marketing side of things, which is okay, getting your messaging out and all of this. But when you're in a field that is competitive, where you have competitors, where you have other people providing similar services, etc., you need to think about how can I uh, bypass the channels that everyone is using, which is, so I'm a digital marketer. That's my main thing. However, I'm a huge endorser of word of mouth. So you need to think about how can I get someone to actually be happy to talk about my business, to share this with someone, whether it's a friend, family, to post it online because their experience was so good. So you need to think beyond the traditional channels that everyone will be using. You need to go beyond that and see how it can enter the real world, which is word of mouth, which is the most powerful thing. So if I come to you and I say, you ask me for a solution for something like, okay, which software you use, you'd ask me and I'd say, well, I've tested 3 and this one is the best one. So you don't even need to think about it. Go with this one. The probability of you using this would be super high, right? So yes, you need to have social media. Yes, you need to have YouTube, everything else. But where people don't look is the highest chance of getting more business, essentially. And let's say in the B2B space, for example, this is a huge thing, right? Like it works for me as well. Like I'm in the space of having a marketing agency, being a fractional CMO, etc. And the biggest thing that works for me is word of mouth. And that has been since the beginning of me starting my entrepreneurial journey. So yes, I use all the marketing channel and everything. But yeah, when you're in the B2B space, especially, you want to see how best you can leverage word of mouth marketing and getting people to actually rave about your product, your service, whatever you may have to offer. So yeah, that's a really good question, and I think those are the top 3 that comes to mind that I would see on repeat.
Sure. And to all the audience, this is a unique podcast because usually, as a courtesy, I will send the questions in advance. But Neil insisted that he didn't want the questions in advance and he would like to take them impromptu. So, whatever he's saying, he's coming out of his experience, his reactions, and I really appreciate that, Neil, because not too many people do that. And you're ready to take on, you're playing T20 cricket right now. So great points. I really like it. No differentiation. Don't talk about the value. They talk about the mechanics. The mouth is important. Let me flip the question around. We started on the negative side, that what are the 3 mistakes they make. I mean, now flip it around, that if somebody's starting out, because I do have a lot of I do work with a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs, and they always struggle. Some of them seem to be fairly confident. A lot of them do struggle. So if somebody had to start, this entire process, what is the best way to get started? How would you do
Okay.
it? How would you advise?
So the single best way, I would say. So I'll give you 2, right? Because the first option may not always be available for everyone. So the single best option is to always think in the lines of the who and not the how. So there's a book on that, right? And instead of thinking, how do I do this? How do I get to the first 5 people, the first 10 people, etc., think about who do I need to connect to get this. So it's always starting with relationships, right? Like that's the first principles of there. Like who do I need to speak to? Who do I need to connect to? Who in my network can I leverage to get it started? Who can recommend me to the first couple people, etc. Right? So that is the single most powerful thing, and I've used it myself. I've seen people in my network, friends, other entrepreneurs, etc., use it as a really powerful tool to basically go about getting anything done, right? Now, the second thing that I wanted to highlight is, let's say, okay, really ground zero. You're not making any progress with that. The network is limited, etc. The first thing that should be worked on is case studies, because nothing beats proof, having case studies and showing like I've done this before, I've provided specific results, and it's all done already, and I can do the same. I can replicate this for you, for your business, in a similar niche, for example. Me myself, that's how I started off my business. When I had my first agency, when I lived back in the Caribbean, this is maybe maybe 14 years ago. The first couple clients I did for free, pro bono, as they say, and I had the case studies built up. And the good thing about this is these people who I did the work for, these entrepreneurs, etc., I built their website, apps, all of this kind of stuff back then. What I did is I simply asked them like, okay, if you're happy with it, can you provide me with a testimonial? Do you know anyone who would benefit from my service? And then from there, people like this tend to know other people like this, right? Like you're Dr. Vikram, for sure you know other doctors, right? So if I were to provide some service for you, you're happy with it, I think you would be happy to refer me to other people just like you. So that is another really powerful tool. So maybe you don't have the network, as I mentioned, the who, and the other option is to go with proof. And yeah, if you're willing to put in the sweat, you can get this done and get those case studies, because then you have leverage to go out and sell, to close deals, get your company growing.
Well, that's a great point. So that builds onto your word of mouth thing because you have a couple of case
Exactly.
studies. Now the word of mouth spreads, and you say, okay, you don't pay me in cash, but you pay me in references, or you pay me in a referenceable story that I'm going to take to the market and then talk about you, which is a great idea.
Yeah.
So, without, of course, divulging critical or sensitive information, in your 14 years, 15 years that you've been working in this industry, which are some of those clients who you think got it right, that you worked with, and they were, because one is you advising them, you coaching them, but they have to also be receptive to your advice, right, to your direction that in which you're going. So which one of those, what are those some examples, that case studies that were
Yeah.
you saw that, okay, yeah, they got it right, they understood, and they probably did a great job of it?
Yeah. So then I think we can go a little bit now into different business models, right? So, for example, the last time I had a corporate job before I went full time into entrepreneurship, I worked at this company called Mind Valley. So, Mind Valley is one of the biggest personal growth wellness companies in the world, right? They have
Mm-hmm.
authors from all over, like leading world authors in many different topics, from meditation to nutrition to performance, you name it. So,
Mm-hmm.
at that time, they were doing products like online courses in this specific instance. So they have other product services offers, right? Like events, like training programs, etc. So at this time, it was the online courses, which is the main staple of the business, right? Let's say the 80/20 would be online courses to the 80%. Now, at that time, they were doing transactional revenue, which is they would just sell individual programs. And we were testing subscriptions, right? Which is in today's world one of the most powerful business models. It's getting reoccurring payments coming in month on month. Now, I would say this was one of the biggest highlights and case studies that I did, and that has led to many other projects and opportunities coming my way. So when we tested in the first year, that transition from a transactional revenue to a subscription revenue generated like 20 million, and that's public knowledge. So I'm not sharing anything that's sensitive, because they do communicate how much students there is and stuff. And eventually that turned into, after I left, they built on that business model, which is now $100 million a year business, right? So that transition from transactional to subscription revenue. Now, this is something obviously not every product offer service can do, but just thinking along these lines can make product development or offer development um, much more profitable and much more predictable for companies. So let's say, for example, you sell a package, a product, a service, whatever it may be. It may be a one-time revenue, and then that's it, right? There's nothing else to offer the customer. No add-ons, no upsells, or anything like that. So even if you don't have the option for a subscription product, whether it's B2B or B2C, what service or product can you continuously provide? Maybe there can be additional things you can provide to solve a different problem or make their life better in some way additional that can be bolted onto whatever you offer as a product or service. So that was a huge shift. Another one I think highlight, which is specifically tied to the medical field, is in dentistry specifically. So this is one of my partner companies because there are companies that I work with that I have like percentages, stakes in and stuff, right? So without giving away too much of what this is exactly, like basically there was a gap we found in the dental niche specifically. And what we did is we crafted an offer around that, basically training dentists in this specific niche because this didn't really exist. And not that it didn't exist, it wasn't executed well, right? And me with a marketing background, I know how to make things stand out. I know how to cut through the noise, as I mentioned in the very beginning, and make it stand out to actually turn it into, let's say, the body that can have the authority in this niche. And to start off this project, we started this off with a Google form. So we didn't have the fancy website and the huge marketing or anything like that. And from just a Google form, we generated like 130K in revenue, right? So this is 130,000 US. And this is before the product was developed because the need was there. The niche wasn't being served the way it's supposed to be served. And we already had proof of concept before we went live with a product. And then from there, we built upon it. Like the first year, I think we did close to 1 million. No, that is a project that is up and running and steady. Things like these I've worked on, so from subscription to high ticket, and yeah, the list goes on. There's a lot of other things I've worked on in the wellness space with events, yeah, so many things because there's a lot of years I've been doing this, but I think those two are really good to highlight because the first instance with the subscription, this is already a successful company, right? So I just explained how we can grow, build on that existing reputation, existing products, and build that even further. And then the second one, I wanted to show someone starting from zero and what potential is there by implementing the right strategies to get it off the ground.
Excellent. I think for our audience, I think what Neil has done is beautifully demonstrated when he said differentiation, when he said, I understand the value, the benefits, word of mouth, and find that niche that nobody's doing and you get into it. I think these are all excellent examples of what the theory you started this podcast with. And for those who are listening and watching this, when Neil said about Mind Valley, I talked about 80-20. That's called the Pareto principle. You should look it up. It's a very fascinating piece of statistics that came out of the Italian real estate market, I think. And all of us in business, at least, we recognize the power of the Pareto principle, still very valid. So, Neil, then one quick segue is lot of, like I told you, what is the one piece of advice? I mean, you've given a lot of your wisdom and knowledge that you've learned over the time. But what is that one piece of advice you want to give to founders? Like one of the things, interesting things you said was you just used Google Forms. You didn't do a fancy website, and it was a quick start, right? I mean, it's not great, but it's more effective. So what is
Yeah.
that really resonated with me because I see a lot of people, they wait for the website, they wait for the videos, they wait for everything.
Yeah.
They lose time. So what is that one piece of advice you want to give entrepreneurs, especially those who are starting out and thinking through marketing?
Yeah. So what you said there a couple words back, which is they lose time. As an entrepreneur, like you're going against time constantly. Aiming for perfection is great, but done is better than perfect, as they say, right? So you need to think in terms of like, how can I prove this? How can I get traction before I have the perfect website, the perfect whatever, right? The perfect product. Like, how can I run this or test this as a version zero, so always aim to have some proof of concept, get things going, get some feedback before you have perfection because things can change. This is business, right? The market can change. What people resonate with can change. Your product, your offers can change. Like competitors may pop up and offer something better than you. So you need to be able to be flexible. So even if you can't collect cash, let's say upfront, if you're in a startup and you're wanting to launch a new product or service, even if you can't collect cash up front, get beta testers, test it out, see what the feedback is, and then refine from there. Don't think, I know, I've run a survey and this is what people want. And then you develop whether it's a product service offer. And then from there, it actually goes live. It's perfect. And you think it's perfect. And then people actually, it's a time to use it. And then it breaks. People don't resonate. It doesn't work the way it should work. Right. So yeah, it's like, you don't need to be fully scrappy, but, one of my business partners, he described me as a ready, fire, aim type of person. But, it won't work every single time, but the chances of it working, over time, over iterations is much higher than trying to find perfection and trying to do everything. Oh, I need to dot every I and cross every T, right? So yeah, this approach I think is much better. Like get something off the ground, even if it's not perfect. Like get it out, get it shipped, get feedback, and then refine from there.
Excellent, Neil. I think we share the same philosophy. This was a new one, ready, fire, aim. What I always tell people is, and this is the wisdom I learned from a very senior colleague at IBM, is that 60% today is better than 100% tomorrow. So you got to go with what you have. And I think that is excellent piece of advice. And for all entrepreneurs, what Neil tells you, and I think it is the universal truth, your only currency you're dealing with is time. If you're going to go today, it's better than going tomorrow, and time is
Correct.
of intense leverage. So that's fantastic, Neil. And And this is really, really very insightful. It's simple. Everybody will think, hey, what's so unique about it? But that's the crux of the problem. We leave the simple things and we do complicated stuff and we get stuck in the
Exactly.
mechanics of it rather than just getting ahead with it. So, one
Exactly.
final question for you. A lot of people now who would have heard you out would want to know how to get in touch with you. So, what are the kind of things you do? How can they get in touch with you? And we haven't discussed where you're located currently, which is of
Yeah.
immense interest to my audience.
Yeah, well, we could start with that. I live in Bali, Indonesia. Moved here a couple years ago with my family, so with my wife, with my son, and we're based here now. And yeah, pretty interesting place actually because I like to think the benefit of being here is that I wake up before the rest of the world, right? So we're all the way to the east, Southeast Asia, and then I usually work with clients, from everywhere else. So whether it be Asia, Europe, the West, USA, Canada, etc. Right? And yeah, it usually is early mornings or late nights for me when I work, which I'm completely fine with because that's a trade-off of living here. And what do I actually do? Well, the core of it, I say, is I help companies add another comma to their revenue, right? So I help scale companies. That's the simplest form. And obviously, my specialty is marketing, CRO, and then product launches, etc. Now, I have different avenues that I go with. I've been helping companies in this space, whether it's wellness, health, longevity, biohacking, etc. Basically, scale up and launch new products, etc. Like right now, primarily, one of my main ways of working with companies is as a fractional CMO, where I come in and I basically design their strategy, review everything that they have going on, and show them the roadmap and help them hands on scaling their companies, getting more customers, increasing their revenue, delivering more value, and bringing more good into the world. Because there's a reason why I am in this niche as well, the wellness health space, is because this deeply resonates with me. I grew up with grandparents who were both sick, so from a really young age, I had to play the role of a caretaker, and then this really put a passion in me for health, for wellness. Yeah, bringing this into the world. So it directly translates into my mission as well. So helping these companies out here grow their revenue, yes, but actually bring about good into the world and help people live longer, healthier, and happier lives.
Excellent, Neil. So it was great having you. I think it's very insightful, and hopefully, those who are listening to it in the audience will learn a few things and maybe to revisit their marketing strategy. And if you are still not able to get it done, then you can always get in touch with Neil. He'll be
Yeah.
happy to help.
I forgot to mention where they can contact me as well. So LinkedIn, Niel Ateem, or my website is multiplier.agency. Anyone can reach out there. If you just want to have a chat or need some help with your marketing scaling, like if you just want to have a chat, I won't charge you for that. I'm always happy to help. If you send me an email and say, hey, I have X, Y, and Z, what do you think I can do with this? Or what should my approach be? I'd be happy to help.
Excellent, Neil. Thank you very much. We'll let you go. I think it's afternoon your time. Pleasure having you. It was a great conversation, and looking forward to staying in touch.
All right, amazing. Thanks for having me, and I hope this brings immense value to your audience.
Thank you. And for the rest of you who are listening in, feel free to reach out as always. I'm available on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. And do listen to some of the other episodes that we've had. And we are going to launch a very cool episode very soon where we talk about Indian food and management with a very crazy investor who I'm in touch with for the last 16 years. So once, as always, have a very healthy, happy, and great day ahead. And thank you once again, Neil. It was a pleasure talking to you. And let's keep in touch. Let's keep the conversation going.
Amazing. Thank you.